Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtipraishu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike. So, continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 2, Maharaj Nimi meets the 9 Yogendras. Text number 41. So, in the previous verse, Yogendra Kavi said that a devotee should not see anything as being separate from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Ether, air, fire, water, earth, sun, and other luminaries, all living beings, the directions, trees, and other plants, the rivers and oceans, whatever a devotee experiences, he should consider to be an expansion of Krishna. Thus, seeing everything that exists within creation as the body of the Supreme Lord Hari, the devotee should offer his sincere respects to the entire expansion of the Lord's body. And then further, he talked about the quality of devotion, the quality of devotee. Now further he says, Bhakti pareshanu bhava viraktir anyatra chastrik ekakala prapadyamanasya yathashnatah syus tushti pushti kshudupayo anughasam. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So these three things happen simultaneously: devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is how powerful devotion is. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained this analogy as follows. Bhakti or devotion may be compared to tushti or satisfaction because they both take the form of pleasure. Paresh Anubhav, experience of the Supreme Lord, and pushti, nourishment, are analogous because both sustain one's life. Finally, virakti, detachment, and kshuddha apaya, cessation of hunger, may be compared because both free one from further hankering so that one may experience shanti or peace. So, tushti, pushti, kshuddha apaya, bhakti, pareshanubhav, virakti, ranyatra. A person who is eating not only becomes uninterested in other activities. If somebody is really, really hungry, when he is eating, he is not interested in anything else, but increasingly becomes uninterested in the food itself later on, according to his satisfaction. On the other hand, according to Srila Jiva Goswami, although one who is experiencing the blissful personality of God, Krishna, becomes uninterested in anything other than Krishna. So this is where the analogy is not complete, but still it gives a very good example. His attachment to Krishna increases at every moment. Therefore, it is to be understood that the transcendental beauty and qualities of the Supreme Lord are not material, since one never becomes satiated by relishing the bliss of the Supreme Lord. The word virakti is very significant in this word. Virakti means detachment, whereas tyaga means renunciation. According to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the word renunciation can be used in a situation in which one considers giving up an enjoyable object. But by considering everything to be potential paraphernalia in the service of Lord Krishna, as described in the previous verse, one need not give thought to renunciation, for one uses everything in the proper way in the service of the Lord. Yukta Vairagya. So one does not become renounced. because everything like is related to Krishna. But he becomes detached. Detached means he's not interested in enjoying those things for oneself. A very pleasant analogy of a good meal is given in this verse. A hungry man busily consuming a sumptuous plate of food is not interested in anything else happening around him. In fact, he considers any other topic or activity a disturbance to his concentration on the delicious meal. Similarly, as one advances in Krishna consciousness, one considers anything unrelated to the devotional service of Krishna an obnoxious disturbance. So this way, it's a very good analogy. Such concentrated love of Godhead has been described in the second canto of Bhagavatam by the words Tivrena Bhakti Yogena Yajeda Purusham Param. One should not make an artificial show of renouncing the material world. Rather, one should systematically train the mind to see everything as an expansion
No voice,
of the
Prabhuji.
opulence. Low voice?
I can hear.
So, Prabhuji, please check on your end.
So okay, Prabhu. Voice is coming perfectly all right.
Okay, let me again. Please mute yourself then. Okay. So one should not make an artificial show of renouncing the material world. Rather, one should systematically train the mind to see everything as an expansion of the opulence of the Supreme Personality of God. Just as a hungry materialistic man, upon seeing sumptuous food, immediately desires to put it in his mouth, an advanced devotee of Krishna, upon seeing a material object, immediately becomes eager to use it for the pleasure of Krishna. Without the spontaneous hunger to engage everything in the service of Krishna and to dive deeper and deeper into the ocean of love of Krishna, so-called realization of God, but loose talk about so-called religious life is irrelevant to the actual experience of entering the kingdom of God. So a hungry man having sumptuous food in front of him, he is uninterested in anything else. So similarly, a devotee of Krishna, when he has found the taste in bhakti, he doesn't care for anything else. Of course, he wants to use everything in service of Krishna, but other than that, he is not interested. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the path of Bhakti Yoga is so joyful and practical that even in the stage of sadhana bhakti, in which one follows rules and regulations without an advanced understanding, one can perceive the ultimate result. So that is Paresh Anubhav. So one can have some experience of Paresh or Krishna. As stated by Srila Rupa Goswami, as soon as one surrenders to the Supreme Lord Krishna, Prapadyamanasya, giving up all other activities, one is immediately to be considered a liberated soul, Jivan Mukta Sochite. The Supreme Lord Krishna is so merciful that when a living entity understands that the personality Krishna is the source of everything and surrenders to the Lord, Krishna personally takes charge of him and reveals to him within his heart that he is under the Lord's full protection. Thus, devotion, direct experience of the personality of Godhead, and detachment from other objects becomes manifest even in the beginning of stage of Bhakti Yoga, since Bhakti Yoga begins at the point of liberation. So if these things, well, to a certain extent, I'm sure it's happening in everybody's heart. It's developing in heart. And if it is not, then we haven't actually started Bhakti Yoga yet. So if we are on the path of Bhakti Yoga, so these three things, this is how we can test if I'm making advancement. Many times devotees ask, how would I know if I'm making advancement? Devotion, direct experience of the personality of Godhead, Krishna, and detachment from other things, other material things, become manifest. So that means we are making progress. So we don't have to ask anybody else. We don't have to show it off to anybody else that I have this and I have that. No, this is my relationship with Krishna. And of course, those who are really advanced, they say, I don't have any devotion. I don't have any direct experience. Their claims, because they are in so much of ecstasy, they say, direct experience? If I had him, why does he run away from me? Why I don't see him? And like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course, he's Krishna himself, but came with the mood of Srimati Radharani. Whenever he, not in the beginning stages, when he went to Jagannath Puri, or even after he got initiation, he was still in Mayapur, Navadvip. Whenever he would hear about Krishna, somewhere he heard Krishna is in your heart, he was ready to tear up his heart to see where is Krishna. And Gadadhar Pandit was there and he stopped and he said, this is not how you see Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would have his Shaligram Shila and he would want to worship Shaligram Shila. And he would start crying, looking at Shaligram Shila and crying. His whole kurta and dhoti, all his clothes, they would get wet. And he would say, I cannot worship the Lord with this. You take off and then wash, and then he put on another dhoti, and again he would start crying. We cannot imitate, and I don't know how many can experience that kind of devotion. But this is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give us. Direct experience of Krishna. Not some impersonal or something else. Direct experience. That is when we start taking shelter of Krishna. And even in the beginning stages, Krishna shows when we are in some kind of situation, fearful situation, or some kind of trouble, Krishna shows. He makes arrangements. Whether he comes personally or whether he makes arrangements with somebody else. Krishna shows he is there to protect his devotees. He always shows that. Just we have to have our eyes open to see his mercy. Other processes have as their final goal salvation or liberation. But according to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna himself says, if one surrenders to Krishna, one is immediately liberated and thus begins his career as a transcendental devotee with complete confidence in Lord's protection. So he says, Sarva Dharmana Paratyaja, Mam Ekam Sharanam Praja. So all we have to do is just take shelter of his lotus feet, and everything else will follow. Iti achyutangrim bhajato anuvritya bhaktir viraktir bhagvat prabodha bhavanti vai bhagvatasya rajans tatah param shantim upayati sakshat. My dear king, the devotee who worships the lotus feet of the infallible personality of Godhead with constant endeavor thus achieves unflinching devotion, detachment, and experienced knowledge of the personality of Godhead. In this way, the successful devotee of the Lord achieves supreme spiritual peace. Param Shanti. And as Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, where is the quotient of happiness without peace? So Param Shanti means complete happiness also. Peace, definitely, but happiness also. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Vihaya Kamanya Sarva, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and who is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. It's not easy to attain peace. Who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and who is devoid of false ego. We talk about peace in the world. How is it going to come when we don't come to this stage? Srila Prabhupada comments, to become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna consciousness is actually desirelessness. So it means no material desires, but mind cannot be stopped from having desires. So having desires, all desires for serving Krishna, becoming Krishna conscious, that is actual desirelessness. There is a similar statement in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna bhakta nishkam ateva shanta, bhakti mukti siddhikami sakali ashanta. Because a devotee of Lord Krishna is desireless, he is peaceful. Fruitive workers desire material enjoyment. Jnanis desire liberation, and yogis desire material opulence or siddhis. Therefore, they're all lusty and cannot be peaceful. So lusty means desires, lots of desires for enjoying here in the material world. Generally, there are three classes of living entities afflicted with selfish desire. These are bhakti-kami, mukti-kami, and siddhi-kami. Bhakti-kami refers to those ordinary persons who desire money and everything money can buy. Such a primitive mentality is based on the desire to enjoy money, sex, and social prestige. When a living being becomes frustrated with this hallucination, he takes to the path of speculative philosophy and analytically tries to track down the source of illusion. Such a person is called mukti-kami because he desires to negate material illusion and merge into an impersonal spiritual state free from anxiety. So mukti-kami, because then he comes to this understanding that as long as body is there, there will be desires. And he wants to run away from material, all these desires. But this is not the real way. So he wants to just merge in Brahm Jyoti and he thinks he can live there free from anxiety and peace. This will be complete peace. But no, Bhagavatam says he falls down from there also. Mukti Kami is also motivated by personal desire. So the desire is not to serve Krishna. Desire is, I should be peaceful. I have suffered enough in the material world. And this is when somebody studies the scriptures on his own, that's what he understands. Similarly, the Siddhi-kami or the mystic yogi who desires the spectacular powers of mystic yoga, such as reaching one's hand across the world, Prapti Siddhi, or making oneself smaller than the smallest, Anima, or lighter than the lightest, Anima, Laghima, Prapti, is also infected by material or selfish desires. Therefore, it is said, Sakali Ashanta, if one has any personal desire, whether it be material, philosophical, or mystic, he will be Ashanta, or ultimately frustrated, because he will see himself as the central object of satisfaction. Ultimately, he will be frustrated, because when we try to satisfy ourselves in any way, it will not work. Because some way or the other way, desires will not be fulfilled. They'll never be completely fulfilled. This egocentric concept is in itself illusory and therefore ultimately frustrating. On the other hand, Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ateva Shanta. A devotee of Lord Krishna is Nishkam. He has no personal desire. His only desire is to please Krishna. Lord Shiva himself has praised this outstanding quality of the pure devotees of the Lord by stating, Narayan para sarve kutaschanna bibhyati, sarga pavarga narake shavi tulyartha darshana. A person who is devoted to the Supreme Personality of God, Narayan, is not afraid of anything. Elevation to the heavenly kingdom, condemnation to hell, and liberation from material bondage all appear to the same to a devotee. Why? Because everywhere, as we've seen, he sees Krishna. He sees everything manifestation of Krishna's energies, and he uses everything in the service of Krishna. And hasati atho rodati roti gayati unmadvat nrityati lokabhaya means he is chanting the holy names of the Lord, he is laughing and dancing, and he doesn't care for anything around him. So what can be done? He's always happy. And this is what Lord Shiva says. A pure devotee, elevation to heavenly kingdom, or even is condemned to hell. Of course, devotees don't go to hell. But even if, like Janak Maharaj went for a moment, or Yudhishthira Maharaj also went for a moment to hell, for them it's all the same. And liberation from material bondage means the mukti part. For them it's the same. Although the impersonalist philosopher proposes that everything is, the devotee of the Lord is actually tulyarthadarshi, or empowered with the oneness. The devotee sees everything as a potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore desires to engage everything in the service of the Lord, for the Lord's satisfaction. Since the devotee does not see anything as Dvitiya or outside the scope of the Lord's potency, he is happy in any situation, having no personal desire. The devotee of Krishna is actually Shanta, peaceful, because he has achieved the perfection of life, love of Krishna. He is actually situated in his eternal constitutional position under the direct shelter and protection of the omnipotent Parameshwara, Krishna. So there is nothing else left for him. If one has achieved Krishna, lotus feet of Krishna, nothing else left. According to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this verse ends the answer given by the first of the 9 Yogendras, Kavi, to Maharaj Nimi's first question. What is the highest good? So this is the highest good for all living entities, for the whole creation to be engaged in the devotional service of Krishna. It's not highest good is if we remove hunger from the world, or if we remove corona from the world. No, that's not the highest good. Highest good is to be engaged in devotional service, because the devotee is happy in this life, and then when he leaves, he goes back to the spiritual world, then he is happy eternally. He lives blissfully with Krishna, serving Krishna, with the associates of, or servants of Krishna. So that is the highest good. So Prabhupada came to give us this highest good. So purpose was, we achieve something great and we give it also and preach, and then they also achieve that. In this way, the whole world can be blissful. Prabhupada himself said, 100% of the population become Krishna conscious, it's not going to happen. Even if 10% becomes, that will still turn the whole world into a happy place. Only 10%. Of course, we are way below even 1% right now. But that's what we have to do. We have to preach, and first we have to adopt it properly. We have to implement it in our lives, and then we have to preach and give it to others. Okay, so this ends the first question, and tomorrow we'll start the next question of Maharaj Nimi. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, see you all have a safe and beautiful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.